My name is Jessica. I'm 28 years old, and I've lived in my neighborhood for nearly 5 years. On the surface, it seemed like a quiet suburb, the kind of place where kids ride bikes and neighbors wave hello. But beneath this idyllic facade, I encountered something so sinister that it still gives me chills. It started a few months ago when I noticed a man who moved into the house directly across the street. He was in his 40s, with disheveled hair and a vacant stare that seemed to follow me, even when I wasn't looking. I'd catch him standing in his window at odd hours, staring. The first time I noticed, I shrugged it off, attributing it to my overactive imagination late at night. Days turned into weeks, and his presence became more pronounced. I distinctly remember one evening while sitting on my porch, the man suddenly appeared outside, standing motionless by his fence, just watching me. My heart raced. Trying to dismiss the feeling of dread creeping over me, I called my best friend Sarah, who assured me I was overreacting. But as the days passed, his behavior escalated into something more deeply unsettling. One night, I saw him pacing in his living room. It was 2 a.m. I sat frozen in my chair, the glow of my phone illuminating my face as I attempted to take a video. But the moment I hit record, the lights in his house flickered and went out, swallowing him in darkness. The following day, I decided to confront him. Perhaps I was foolish, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. When I knocked on his door, he answered, peering at me with those same vacant eyes. I asked him about his unusual habits, attempting to maintain a composed demeanor. He merely smiled, a cold, unsettling smile, and gestured to the inside of his house, insisting he had been watching over the neighborhood. That night, I received a frantic call from Sarah. "Jessica, have you checked the news?" she gasped, her voice trembling. Apparently, a series of unsolved disappearances had haunted our city for months. The latest victim, a woman who lived just 2 blocks away. My heart sank. I hung up and glanced out the window. His figure loomed there once more. My perception of reality shifted in an instant. Days later, after an uneasy week filled with sleepless nights, I spotted police cars surrounding his house. Curiosity got the best of me, and I went outside, only to discover that he had been taken into custody. Unwillingly, I learned later, for the disappearance of those women. But here's the twist that still haunts me. As I watched the officers lead him away, he turned to me and whispered, "I was just watching over you." That's when I realized I had been his intended target all along. I'm David, age 35, and when I joined my family in this quaint neighborhood, I was oblivious to the dark history of the local playground just a few blocks away. It was a place where children once played, now merely a creaky structure overtaken by vegetation and memories of laughter long gone. One dreary afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. Driven by an eerie feeling, I suggested to my younger sister Lily that we explore the abandoned playground. She hesitated at first, insisting the air felt off, but I persuaded her. As soon as we stepped onto the rusted swings, an unsettling atmosphere enveloped us. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the fainted creaking of metal. While exploring the remnants of the slides, something caught my eye. A worn teddy bear lay partially buried beneath the leaves. It looked surprisingly out of place. As I leaned down to examine it, I felt a strange chill creep up my spine, as if I was being watched. Ignoring my instincts, I reached for the bear until Lily's scream pierced the stillness of the air. I turned, heart pounding, to see her pointing at the far side of the playground. A dark figure loomed there, barely illuminated by the fading daylight. My instincts screamed for us to run, but a sense of dread rooted me to the spot. The figure stepped closer, a child, maybe 5 or 6, with hollow eyes and a smile that felt far too wide for comfort. "Help me," he whispered, a point at the old sandpit near the swings. A knot tightened in my stomach, but I felt a compulsion to obey. As we approached, I noticed something protruding from the sand. I knelt, revealing the skeletal remains of a small dog, tethered to a tiny collar. The child's grin widened, and an icy realization washed over me. His eyes were devoid of warmth, and that's when I understood. This playground was more than abandoned. It was a graveyard for lost innocence, where lost children tied their fate to the darkness. Before I could react, the figure faded into the shadows, leaving us alone with the weight of what we discovered. We fled the playground, hearts racing. The day after, Lily and I shared our encounter with our parents, but they only shrugged it off as childhood imagination. That evening, a news report broke about a gruesome incident. A child, missing for years, had allegedly been seen wandering the woods near the playground. The narrative shifted as authorities began an investigation, finding buried truths about those lost to darkness. But here's the unfortunate twist. They never discovered any of the evidence Lily and I did. The playground remains a place of whispers and ghost stories, the innocent lost and the evil hidden in plain sight. My name is Mark, and I'm 40 years old. Living next door to Mrs. Jenkins was a norm I grew accustomed to, but everything changed when strange occurrences began to unfold. Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman known for her sweet demeanor, quietly faded away last summer. No one saw her for weeks, and eventually the missing person reports became the talk of the neighborhood. Oddly enough, I began to hear strange noises, whispers and thumps during the night that seemed to echo from her abandoned house. As the days turned into sleepless nights, I became increasingly fixated on her home, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One stormy evening, emboldened by a mix of courage and dread, I ventured into her dilapidated yard. The air was thick with unease, the wind shrieking through the branches. As I snuck around to the back, I noticed the door slightly ajar, inviting me into darkness. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The interior was a disarray of dust and decay. Oddly enough, the tattered cushions bore remnants of her belongings. A familiar scent of lavender lingered in the air, intertwined with something else foul. The floor creaked under my weight, amplifying my anxiety. I wandered deeper into the house. Each room emanated a heavy nostalgia, laced with loss. In the far corner, I found a small stack of journals. They were filled with her neat handwriting, chronicling years of loneliness and heartache. But as I flipped through pages, my breath caught in my throat. There were notes about a man who had approached her, an inconsistent silhouette seen on the corner of her lawn. I read a passage that chilled me to the bone, describing her fear that he was watching her. Suddenly, I heard footsteps from upstairs. My heart raced as I wrestled with the decision to flee or continue. Driven by a morbid curiosity, I ascended the staircase. The floorboards groaned beneath me, each creak echoing like a warning. As I reached the top, a faint light illuminated the hallway, revealing an old photograph of Mrs. Jenkins, but with someone standing behind her, a shadowy figure whose face was obscured. The air shifted as the whispers grew louder. "Help me," echoed around me, but the voice was distorted, like a tape played backward. Suddenly, the door at the end of the hallway slammed shut. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, desperate to escape the grip of terror. When I finally dashed out of the house, I collided with the shadowy figure outside, the very man Mrs. Jenkins wrote about. He stood there, unnaturally still, eyes lost in the void. I backed away, but he merely smiled, revealing a twisted grin that didn't match the warmth of his voice. "She's been waiting for you. That was the plan all along." Mrs. Jenkins hadn't been just a lonely neighbor. It was clear she had been warning me of her fate all along, each journal a siren call, leading me to a trap laid by the very spirit of loss she had harbored. Standing there, I recognized the most terrifying truth of all. Sometimes the one watching over you may be the very darkness you fear the most.